Hello and welcome to OUTLORE Podcast. I'm Eleanor Neale, and in today's episode, we're in Dublin in 2018 at UFC fighter Conor McGregor's hotel room after party, where one woman would escape, traumatised, half-dressed and in pain. The next morning, she told her boyfriend everything, that Conor McGregor had violated and taken advantage of her. An ambulance was called and her brutal injuries were realised before she was even changed into a hospital gown. And what followed were 6 years of pure hell. She was torn to shreds by her abuser's millions of fans. Her home was even broken into, but she never gave up fighting for herself and for women everywhere. This is the trial of Conor McGregor, and trust me, it's not the story you think. Outlaw. Before we get into today's case, I do just want to thank our sponsor, NordVPN, for helping to make today's episode possible. My love for Nord just grows more and more as time goes on because no one has my back quite like them. Scams, phishing emails, hacking, and dodgy malware, they defend me through thick and thin. NordVPN's goal is to make the internet a safer place for everyone, and so far, they're keeping strong on that. I'm always online, whether it's shopping, researching, and with work, I'm constantly opening emails, and the amounts of times that I've gone to click on a link in an email that's masquerading as a brand deal or claiming to just be like a general business inquiry, it could have landed me in some seriously dark waters. I'm talking potential software hacks, identity theft, fraud, holding my device for ransom. It's all possible, but with NordVPN, I'm protected against all of that. They even have features like the Dark Web Monitor and Threat Protection Pro, which can catch everything. They're able to stop scams and save you from entering these dodgy sites. They give you a heads up and let you know if your password or your details have been compromised so that you can jump in and take action to defend yourself and change anything that you need to. All you need to do is switch on your device and NordVPN does the rest. No more braving it online alone. NordVPN has your back. And you can get an exclusive NordVPN deal with 4 months extra when you click the link down below in the description of this video. It's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring this episode of Outlaw on YouTube. Now, before we jump headfirst into this case, I do want to warn you of some very sensitive topics that we're going to be discussing today, including misogyny, violence, robbery, sexual assault, rape, and rape examinations. So, as always, viewer discretion is advised. Now, usually here at Outlaw Podcast, we like to deep dive into the backstory of the people that we talk about. But it's often the case for famous men who allegedly commit horrific crimes that these stories become all about them rather than about their victims. So we're not going to do that today. But just in case you are completely new to this man, all you need to know about Conor McGregor is that he is a 37-year-old professional mixed martial arts fighter, and he is idolised by so many young men. For many of them, McGregor is an aspirational idol. He was always the underdog who came from nothing. He went from living on welfare in Ireland to becoming the highest paid UFC fighter in history. But even out of the octagon, trouble follows Conor McGregor everywhere he goes. He can't outrun his own aggressive, violent, and predatorial tendencies. Towards the end of this episode, you'll realise that this case at hand is far from the only sexual assault allegation thrown at this man. But today, we're here to discuss one set of accusations in particular. The very brave woman at the centre of today's case is Nikita Hand. She's now 35 years old, but she was 29 at the time when she went back to Conor McGregor's hotel room, trusting that she was safe. She wasn't. Nikita later testified that she didn't really know McGregor all that well at the time of this incident. They knew of each other and they moved in the same circles since they lived relatively close by in Dublin. They had a lot of mutual friends. In fact, Nikita's boyfriend was friends with McGregor's girlfriend's brother. Bit complicated, but the point is they're in the same world, but they're not too familiar with each other before this. They followed each other on social media, and actually not long before all this happened, Nikita had commented on one of McGregor's posts about how she wanted to try his own branded whiskey, and he responded to her saying that she could have anything she wanted. But despite her being mutuals with the highest paid UFC fighter, Nikita Hand was just a normal Dublin girl. She had a load of friends, she had a poppin' social life, she'd been working as a hairstylist in Goatstown for about a decade. She did her apprenticeship at the same salon that she was still working at the time of this case. Her boss even said she was good and she knew it. Nikita even had a little family of her own. She had a young daughter who was her absolute world. She'd also just purchased a house with her boyfriend at the time of this case. She had such a happy little life until that night. The incident took place on December 9th, 2018, but our story actually begins the night before, when Nikita and her colleagues from the hair salon went out on their work Christmas party. Nikita was wearing a striking red jumpsuit. She was feeling glamorous and festive as she and her friends sipped their wine and got merry. The work Christmas party is always a staple of the season for us here in the UK and Ireland. Everyone gets a bit silly with it. It's a universal experience. The girls all met up at the salon where they worked. In fact, it wasn't just Nikita's salon that was out that night. It was them and their sister salon. But they all met up. Oh, I just hit the microphone, sorry. They all met up at the salon and they had a few pre-drinks there. Then they went out bar hopping and they partied into the next day. There was no sign of slowing down even as the sun came up on December 9th. Once all the bars had closed in the early hours of the morning, the girls returned to the hair salon to keep drinking there. By this point, Nikita changed out of her gorgeous red jumpsuit and into a slightly more comfier black one. Of course, at this point, she had already posted all of her original outfit photos on Instagram, and it seems that they had caught the attention of one Mr. Conor McGregor. It just so happened that he had also been on a crazy night out that night, well, the night before, and it had bled into the next day. Just like Nikita, he was drunk and not looking to slow down anytime soon. McGregor had spent the night at Crystal nightclub in Dublin. He'd been buying rounds of drinks for his whole crew all night, and it seems that most of them were on coke. In fact, I believe the hair salon girls were as well. It explains why everyone's awake and partying into the next day, doesn't it? Hey. But by around 8 a.m, the club that Conor McGregor was in had closed, and he was looking at booking a penthouse hotel suite in Dublin. Don't ask me why, because I believe he lives in Dublin, or at least just outside of Dublin. Some people just have too much money. I don't know. He wanted a hotel right down the road from the club. Honestly, if I was to hazard a guess, and this is literally just an Eleanor conspiracy theory, but McGregor does have a long-term partner that we mentioned briefly earlier. Her name is Dee Devlin. I actually think that they're engaged now, and they also have 4 kids together. But McGregor is famously unfaithful to this woman. Not only are there so many photos of him cheating on her, oh my god, one of which literally just surfaced last month in July 2025. He's like groping this woman on the beach. He is actively still publicly cheating on Dee Devlin to this day. But on top of McGregor's seemingly consensual affairs, you know, where he's photographed cuddling girls on the beach, they don't look like they're uncomfortable to be there. But on top of all of those, there are so many more accusations of him being handsy and forceful with unsuspecting women that have told him that they don't want it, and he doesn't take no for an answer. We'll talk about many more of them a bit later on in this episode, but my point at this stage is that he seems to take every opportunity to get close with other women when his partner isn't around. So my thought process as to why he's booking this hotel, it's called the Beacon Hotel in Dublin after this night out, is that maybe he thought he was going to get lucky. Maybe he thought he was going to bring another woman back from the club. I don't know, that's just my theory. But it seems that Conor McGregor didn't pull at the club. Or maybe he did. I'm not sure. After some digging, I did some Googling, of course. Crystal nightclub closes at 3 a.m, but McGregor isn't accounted for again that day until about 7 a.m. So there's about 4 hours, just short of 4 hours that he's unaccounted for. So who knows? Maybe he did get lucky. Maybe he went to some woman's house. But regardless of whether he hooked up with someone or not, he clearly wasn't satiated, because at around 7 a.m, he was horny scrolling and messaging Nikita Hand once the sun had come up. He admitted that he liked what he saw in the photos of Nikita in her red jumpsuit, and that was when he asked where she was. I don't know how the conversation really went from that point, but I do know how it ended, with Conor McGregor and his security staff going to pick Nikita up in his car to bring her back to his hotel room. Around 9 a.m. on December 9th, the car pulled up outside the hair salon, but Nikita wouldn't be going alone. She brought her friend and colleague, Danielle Keeley. Now, Nikita admits that at this point she had been drinking a lot and she had done cocaine that night. She'd been up non-stop at this point for about 33 hours, and she had eaten very little. Things were blurry, and the timeline isn't exactly straightforward. Oh my god, gang, when I tell you that this has been one of the hardest cases we've ever had to research. Regardless of the state that she was going to Conor McGregor's hotel room in, one thing is absolutely certain to Nikita, and that is that whatever happened later on in that hotel room was not consensual. McGregor's hotel room wouldn't be ready until about 12 p.m. midday, so for about an hour or so, he and the two girls drove around for a bit. I don't know. Apparently, he just likes being driven around by people. He finds it very relaxing, so sometimes he will just do exactly that. So they were driving around, they were drinking in the car. I think they were still doing cocaine early this next morning. And they went to go and pick up Conor McGregor's friend, James Lawrence, who had actually been out with him the night before at Crystal nightclub, but he had gone home. And now I guess McGregor's bugging him, being like, come back out, come back out. So they go and pick him up. They also picked up some more cocaine. They picked up some more drinks. And yeah, they just spent about an hour in the car just chatting, laughing, consuming a bunch of fucking substances. And then eventually the hotel suite is ready. And all four of them head up to the 7th floor at about midday. After a while in the hotel suite, Danielle Keeley and James Lawrence were getting hot and heavy, so they went into another room to go and have sex, and Nikita says that this is when Conor McGregor came on to her. She said, "He started by trying to kiss me. He was rubbing my face. I knew what he was looking for. I didn't want to have sex. I was there to have a party and to have a good time." She said that she tried to turn him down in a nice way, talking about how she knew his partner's family and the whole thing felt uncomfortable. She would rather not. But she said that Conor wouldn't take no for an answer. She even told him that she was on her period at that point in time, hoping that maybe that would put him off. But it didn't. She claims that he pinned her down on the bed, telling her, "Relax, baby, relax," before aggressively pulling her clothes off, even tearing both straps of her jumpsuit in the process. That must have been an aggressive move. She tried to put her arms up and create kind of a barrier in between her and McGregor, try and push him away and keep him off her, but he continued to push past her physical refusal. She said, "He pinned me down to the bed and pressed his whole body down on top of me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The more I tried to get away or struggle, the more he liked it. The only thing I could do was move my head, so my only defense was to try and bite." She said that she did bite Conor to defend herself, but she doesn't remember whereabouts she actually managed to bite him. All she knew was that, quote, "I knew he didn't like it, so he flipped me around and had me by the neck and tried to choke me." Conor McGregor proceeded to put Nikita's hand in a chokehold 3 times, and she froze. She was in so much fear at this point. She genuinely thought that she might die, that Conor McGregor might kill her in this hotel room. Clearly, he's intoxicated, not in his right head. She was fearing that she would never see her daughter again. As Nikita struggled to breathe, her neck crushed in his arm, McGregor told her now she knew how he felt in the octagon when he had to tap out. He was referring to his fight with Khabib from 2 months prior, which was, a low point in McGregor's career, to say the least. He had to tap out and surrender in front of the whole world. It is possibly one of the most embarrassing, humiliating ways for a UFC fight to come to an end is if you have to tap out. It was a knock to his reputation. It was a huge knock to his ego. Clearly, he wasn't over the humiliation. He was still looking to take it out on someone. And when it comes to that, men like McGregor aren't bothered about a fair fight. He wasn't taking the humiliation out on Khabib or on the UFC, nor the media who was ripping him to shreds. Instead, he took out all of that pent-up rage and directed it at someone that he knew he could overpower. Of all of the men that he could have had a fair scrap with, he chose a woman. Because guys like him feel entitled to do whatever they want. When life doesn't go their way, they take it out on whoever they think that they can control just to feel like they're back on top. But they weren't in the octagon. This wasn't a UFC fight. Nikita couldn't tap out. Eventually, he let her go, and Nikita said, "I remember saying sorry to him. I kept saying, I'm sorry. I felt like I had done something wrong. I kept saying sorry to reassure him that I wouldn't tell anyone so that he wouldn't hurt me again." And then she said the most heartbreaking thing. "I just let him do whatever he decided to do after that so that I could survive." The group all stayed in that hotel room for the rest of the day, and the details of what was happening in there are practically impossible to piece together. As you'll see later on in this episode, as I previously mentioned, everyone has a different version of events. Every single person in that penthouse seemed to experience this day differently. This is probably, as I will say again, one of the most confusing cases we have researched in a long, long time. We've done our best to cross-check it all and to timeline it all, but if you start to feel perplexed at points, don't worry, we're all in the same boat. It's not that you're just not understanding it. It is, like, I feel for the courts that had to make decisions on this one. What we do know for sure is that around 6:15 p.m, after the alleged rape had taken place, Conor McGregor was driven home from the hotel, back to his partner and children, who he lived with, I think about 40 minutes away from the Beacon Hotel. Danielle Keeley, who was Nikita's friend from the salon, I believe lived in the same direction as where Conor was going, so she also had a lift in the car. But Nikita Hand and McGregor's friend James Lawrence made the decision to hang back at the hotel suite for a few more hours. They ordered burgers, they were sat chilling and chatting. Some other shit potentially happened, and we'll circle back to that later. But Nikita claims that during this window of time, she had sobered up a little bit, and she was looking at the bruising that was left all over her body, allegedly by McGregor when he had raped her. And she, as she stared at her bruised body, she broke down in tears, asking James Lawrence, "Do yous all put a blind eye to what Conor does to women?" She couldn't believe that this guy had sat by in the hotel room and just let him do this to her. But Nikita did say that James was actually quite kind to her at this point when she was freaking out. He apparently tried to calm her down. He got her a drink. He got her something to eat. And eventually, both of them also left the Beacon Hotel around 10:30 p.m. They shared a taxi, but Nikita didn't actually go straight home. She went to her boss's house and told her everything about the rape. Her boss was very supportive. She comforted Nikita and told her not to go home and shower, to call the rape crisis helpline, and to go straight to the hospital to do a rape kit examination. According to Nikita, her boss also took photos of the extensive bruising on her body, but out of fear, Nikita actually made her delete them from her phone. So these photos of the bruising have never been seen. They've never been used as evidence. Nikita eventually arrived back at the house that she shared with her boyfriend in the early hours of December 10th. And once again, she relived the whole nightmare, and she told him that she had been raped. Her boyfriend, who I believe she split up with not long after this case, actually secretly recorded most of what Nikita was about to say to him. And I don't really know what to say about that. I can't imagine my partner coming home distressed and confiding in me about one of the most traumatizing things that could have possibly happened to them, and the thought crossing my mind to get my phone out secretly and hit record on voice memos and secretly record it. Like, what for? Surely we must be missing something about that man or about their relationship. Like, that's just insane to me. But the point is, he recorded Nikita telling him everything. She's just crying through this whole thing. And actually, as he's like asking her questions about it, Nikita is being quite cryptic because she seems scared to admit who had done this to her. But she is clearly distraught as she tells him all the other details. This boyfriend of hers keeps pushing her to name her attacker, and eventually she broke down sobbing, saying, "He says he will kill me." To that, her boyfriend tries to reassure her, saying, "This shit doesn't happen anymore. It's not a case of shutting up and saying nothing. This thing of keeping quiet is not all right." Later that day, Nikita went to her mum's house. She was still in pain, still in shock, to the point where her mum actually called her an ambulance. She knew that her daughter needed some proper professional help. And when the paramedics showed up, what they found was absolutely horrific. I won't lie, this next part is quite graphic. As a paramedic examined Nikita on the way to the hospital's sexual assault unit, they found a tampon still inside her, wedged way too far up. It would have taken real force to push a tampon into a woman that deep. She would have been in so much pain, and getting it out wouldn't be easy. At the hospital, doctors literally had to use forceps. You know those big, like, metal salad tongs? They look like something straight out of medieval torture, but they're often used to help open up a woman while she's giving birth and things like that. They needed to use forceps to remove this tampon that was impossibly wedged way too far up. And that wasn't all. The nurses in the sexual assault unit recorded the many, many injuries littering Nikita's body. There was a cut on her chin, a scrape on her breast, extensive bruising around her neck especially, but also on her chest, her abdomen, her buttocks, her thighs. One paramedic even said that they had not actually seen someone so bruised in all their time. Nikita's bruising was officially recorded as a moderate to severe level, only seen in 10% of patients on the sexual assault unit. Psychological symptoms were also logged at this time. She was having panic attacks, flashbacks. This poor woman, not only was her body in pain, but everything was so overwhelming to a point where she just couldn't see a way out. I'm not sure that she'd even told anyone at this point in time who had assaulted her yet. And that has to be adding to the emotional torment. She was holding all of that in and carrying it alone. In early January 2019, just weeks after the assault, Nikita went to the police and made a statement alleging that Conor McGregor had raped her. She told them pretty much everything I've just told you. Same story, same details. The police opened an investigation, and on the 17th of January, McGregor was brought in for questioning, where he strongly denied Nikita's allegations. He actually said that he was terrified about such horrific accusations, and he just wanted to get everything out in the open. But then he proceeded to respond no comment to more than 100 questions. I mean, obviously, he is totally entitled to his right to silence. There should be no penalty for saying no comment in police interviews. But for a man that just wants to get all of this out in the open, it's a weird way to do it, is it not? To not give over any information? I don't know. But when he was shown the images of Nikita's extensive bruises, McGregor was a bit taken aback. He studied them for a moment, and then he asked the police, well, what if she'd had sex with someone else that night too? And it seems that something changes around this point, because then we get probably the most shocking revelation of the case. McGregor tells the police that not only had Nikita engaged in supposedly consensual sex with him that night, but also with his friend James Lawrence as well. What? This absolutely horrified Nikita, who had zero memory of that ever happening, not even a slight shred or a flashback or anything. She had never accused James Lawrence of anything because she literally didn't know that he had had sex with her. And what's even more horrifying is when James was called in for his police questioning, he agreed that this is what happened. He said, yeah, I also had sex with Nikita. It is beyond disturbing. My heart really breaks for Nikita Hand. She couldn't work out if James Lawrence was lying and, you know, maybe trying to protect his friend and make her look like an unreliable victim, or even worse, maybe he was telling the truth and he had genuinely had sex with her when she was so out of it that she didn't remember even a single second of it, and so she couldn't possibly have consented to that. James said that the sex between him and Nikita took place after Conor McGregor and Danielle Keeley had left the hotel together just after 6 p.m. Obviously, Nikita and James stayed a little while longer until about 10 p.m. And James insists that the sex that the two of them had in that time was consensual, and Nikita didn't seem out of it. She didn't seem drunk or like she was blackout and not going to remember it. But it just doesn't make sense to me. Nikita remembers being raped by Conor McGregor. She was very aware of everything that was going on. His weight on top of her, the headlocks that he had her in, the comments that he was making to her. She was traumatized. She was uncomfortable. And now, James Lawrence wants us to believe that a few hours later, she forgot all about how violated she felt with Conor McGregor just in time to perk up and have actually consensual sex with James and not remember it at all. It just doesn't seem likely to me. Her mind surely wouldn't have been in a sexy place after she had literally just been assaulted, tampon wedged all the way up there, so impossibly uncomfortably high. So what's the real story? Was Nikita maybe in so much shock that she just doesn't remember it happening? Maybe it did. Did it even happen though? Or was James just saying this to protect McGregor and to plant seeds of doubt in Nikita Hand's story? It's strange to me that this detail of James and Nikita having sex only came out when McGregor saw photos of her extensive severe bruising. Now, I am not accusing anyone of anything right here, but it's almost like McGregor knew that there needed to be some explanation for that level of bruising, and it wasn't going to be him. James Lawrence has been accused of taking the fall for Conor McGregor in this case, although James insists that he would never do that. But I have to say, James Lawrence is where most of the contradicting evidence seems to stem from. So think of that what you will. Clearly, there is a lot that we don't know for sure. Both McGregor and James Lawrence claim that they're innocent, that nothing unconsensual happened that day. But all of these blurry details haven't changed the one thing that Nikita Hand knew for sure, and that was that she never said yes to having sex with Conor McGregor that day. And that's what this entire case boils down to: consent. During this time, a doctor officially declared Nikita Hand unfit for work due to severe depression, anxiety, and PTSD. She was having constant nightmares and panic attacks and flashbacks. Her work and her ability to communicate with customers and clients was shot because her confidence had sunk so low. This whole thing affected her on so many levels, and perhaps the hardest part for Nikita was feeling like it wasn't just her that was affected. She felt like her daughter and her partner were suffering right alongside her, because what happened didn't just affect Nikita and her own well-being, it affected the whole family, especially with the press media circus that would form around this case. Fast forward to June 2020, and the public prosecution decided not to press charges against Conor McGregor because there wasn't enough evidence for a reasonable chance of conviction, apparently. But what does that really mean? Well, consent was always going to be hard to argue in her case. In situations like this, the burden does unfairly fall on the victim to prove that she didn't consent, rather than on the accused to prove that she did consent. And because Nikita had gaps in her memory, she was high, she was drunk, she apparently had sex with James after the assault, prosecutors just felt like a jury would have reasonable doubt in this case. So even if the case looked strong, if McGregor could offer any kind of explanation that sounded even remotely possible to cause a shred of doubt in the jury, then he would walk free. But Nikita wasn't giving up, and with the help of the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, she pushed to get the evidence reviewed. She had physical bruising all over her body. Her injuries were real and documented. Wasn't that enough to prove that something happened? Well, apparently not. The prosecution didn't change their minds and refused to take her case to trial in criminal court. So was that it? Was that where this ended? Well, obviously not. You've seen how much longer this episode is. Not for Nikita. If the system wasn't going to fight for her, she would fight for herself. Now, something a lot of people don't know, but absolutely should, is that even if criminal charges don't go ahead, survivors can still take their case to civil court. And that's exactly what Nikita did. But before we dive into the civil case, I do want to take a moment to highlight an incredible charity that we just mentioned, the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, that was a huge, huge support to Nikita and to so many other women in Ireland. Today, sexual consent remains one of the most misunderstood issues in Ireland, and the gap between men's and women's views is shocking, actually. While 92% of adults agree that you can take back consent at any time, almost a third of young men between the ages of 18 and 24 think that once you've said yes, you can't really change your mind, which is horrifying to hear. The Dublin Rape Crisis Centre is an Ireland-based charity that provides support with reporting assaults, legal processes, emotional care. They have a 24-hour national helpline that you can call for support whenever you need it. So please, if you are going through this, alongside going to the police, do reach out to helplines. Similar organisations exist all over the world, and help is there for you if you need it. Consent and the way that it's handled isn't just an issue in Ireland, it's a global problem. In the description of this episode, you will find our link tree where we're always adding more resources and helplines and organisations from different countries. They can offer support, safety, and the guidance that you deserve. All right, let's talk civil versus criminal trials. What is the difference and why does it matter? Well, in Ireland, the standard of proof required in civil court is actually lower than in criminal court. And you also don't have to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt like in criminal court. Instead, it's based on a balance of probabilities, meaning the court must decide if something was more than likely... The court must decide if something was more likely than not to have happened. Oh my god, I got there in the end. McGregor can't go to prison on a civil trial. If he lost, he wouldn't face prison time, but instead he would be ordered to pay financial damages to Nikita Hand. Criminal trials are about punishment and sentencing and everything, while civil trials are more about taking accountability. But the biggest risk for Nikita in bringing her case before a civil court was losing her anonymity. In a criminal case, her identity would have been protected, but in a civil case, you don't get that option. Her full name and her story became fully public. And when you're accusing someone as famous and powerful as McGregor, that is so intimidating and borderline dangerous, actually. Nikita wasn't just filing a lawsuit, she was putting herself in the firing line of internet trolls and fanboys who she knew would give her a hard time. She'd already been terrified to take McGregor to criminal court in the first place, where she would have at least had anonymity. In fact, she was so scared for her life that she almost didn't report the attack at all in the first place. She told her family and friends to delete their messages and to delete the photos of the bruises, because she was afraid that if word got out, Conor McGregor would come after her. And honestly, she wasn't wrong to be afraid, because not long after the case went public, a group of masked men broke into her home. It was late at night on the 14th of June 2024. Nikita was at home in bed with her boyfriend, and her daughter was sleeping in the next room when they heard a huge crash downstairs and suddenly footsteps pounding through the house. A group of men in balaclavas had smashed one of their downstairs windows and broken in. They rushed up into the bedroom where Nikita was, and at least one of these men was wielding a knife. What the fuck were they here to do? What did they want? Her boyfriend jumped up and tried to defend Nikita. He began trying to fight the men off, but one of them stabbed him. It wasn't going to be a fatal stab wound, but he'd still been fucking stabbed by someone breaking into his house. The masked men quickly fled the scene after this happened, and once Nikita and her boyfriend knew that the coast was clear, they made their way around the house to see the damage, to see what had been stolen. But weirdly enough, nothing. The men that broke into her house had done nothing but run upstairs, scare them, stab her boyfriend in some kind of altercation, and then they left. It makes you wonder, if they weren't there to rob the place, then what were they actually after? What was their real reason for breaking into Nikita Hand's home and bringing weapons? Nikita was only further traumatized by this incident. She believed that it had to be connected to the allegations that she had made against Conor McGregor. This seemed like a group of young men that were trying to scare her. They ended up having to move homes because of this break-in. Her lawyers even tried to bring it up in court as evidence that Nikita lives in fear and maybe she needed money to relocate after this case. It was made very clear in court when they brought this up that they weren't saying that McGregor personally had anything to do with it. They didn't accuse him of orchestrating it or encouraging it or anything like that. But I also don't believe it was entirely a coincidence either. The break-in just so happened after she had taken McGregor to court and her anonymity had been waived. Also, have you seen Conor McGregor's fan base? They are so intense. There is definitely an overlap between Andrew Tate and Conor McGregor's fanboys. If you've watched Adolescence as well, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These guys are the ones who act like women exist just to ruin men's lives. It's scary, some of the shit that they come out with. I really wouldn't put it past some of those nutters to break into someone's house and stab someone over it all. But the judge kept the home invasion out of the trial. The jury never heard about the attack and the fact that her boyfriend was stabbed in his own home. Look, we've already started spilling bits of the trial, so let's dive in all the way now. It started on November 5th, 2024, and over the next 8 days, the jury heard all of the evidence, including testimony from the 4 people who were there that day: Nikita Hand, Conor McGregor, James Lawrence, and Danielle Keeley. The jury was made up of 8 women and 4 men, and the courtroom was packed. It was so full every single day of the trial. Obviously, reporters and journalists were having a field day. This was prime news, but they weren't the only ones. Conor McGregor's fans had shown up in their droves. Some of them were so young that they were even there in their school uniforms. These teenage boys had skipped school to come and watch their idol who was in court for raping a woman. God help us, seriously. Not only is this harrowing for society as a whole, but for Nikita, who was brave enough to accuse this man who has a lot of power. She now has to do this whole trial, which would be awful enough in itself, but now with an audience that is on the side of her alleged rapist. Her boyfriend knew just how hard all of this was on Nikita, and so he accompanied her to court every single day to support her. He was even seen crying for her when she took the stand. I'm glad that she had someone by her side. But Nikita wasn't the only one with her partner by her side. Conor McGregor's long-term girlfriend, now fiancé, Dee Devlin, was there to support her boyfriend through his rape accusations. Now that's awkward. I mean, as I said earlier on in this episode, the whole entire world is very aware that McGregor relentlessly cheats on Dee Devlin. It's never discreet, it's never secretive, pictures surface regularly, he doesn't give a fuck, like, he clearly does not respect that woman. And it must be awful for her. I'm not saying that it's not, like, that is like psychological torment to have to see that in the papers, your fiancé, the father of your 4 children, cheating on you once again and then coming back as if nothing happened. And you know what? I don't want to be mean, but is all of that not embarrassing enough? Supporting him through the consensual cheating is one thing, but then supporting him when his infidelity lands him in court. Because remember, he's not even denying having sex with Nikita Hand. In fact, he's saying quite the opposite. He is there to argue that both of them willingly jumped into bed with each other that night because they wanted to. And now his partner, Dee Devlin, is holding his hand walking into court. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to dunk on her too much, but I do have a bad taste in my mouth about Dee Devlin in general because she had her own snarky shit to say about Nikita Hand online. She victim blames her entirely for how drunk she was, the fact that she wasn't at home with her daughter, and she even tries to drag Nikita for cheating on her man with Conor McGregor. Like, who's gonna tell Dee Devlin that that's her man? And he's being accused of rape, not even just cheating. Anyways, sorry, a bit of a tangent. Let's talk about the content of the civil trial, starting with our witnesses. James Lawrence was firmly on Conor McGregor's side through all of this. Just FYI, I feel like this is kind of important to know, he was represented by the same lawyer as Conor McGregor, who was also footing all of his legal bills as well. So think of that what you will. But James Lawrence claimed that all 4 of them hung out in the hotel room, no one seemed too drunk or too out of it, and then at one point, McGregor got up and went into the bedroom, and apparently Nikita followed him. The door was left open, and Lawrence claimed that he could hear the 2 of them having sex in there. He even said that he saw Nikita naked on top of McGregor, and he could hear her moaning with pleasure. None of it sounded worrisome, I guess. He had no reason to think that what was going on in that bedroom was unconsensual, he said. Danielle, Danielle Keeley, Nikita's friend, was with James Lawrence that whole time. In fact, they were having sex themselves on the sofa bed. But to say that they were both together, literally on the same sofa bed, a surprising number of details in their accounts don't match up. Danielle did see McGregor and Nikita go into the bedroom, but she wasn't aware that they were having sex in there at all. She said that she didn't hear a thing, she didn't know a thing. And when Nikita came back out, Danielle said that everything seemed fine. I just think it's quite impossible that Danielle and James Lawrence would have been on the same sofa, but one of them literally saw and heard the sex going on, but the other one didn't notice anything at all. Fair warning, there is going to be a lot of he said, she said in this trial. In fact, the judge himself said in one of his closing statements that he believed that at least one person had lied when giving evidence and details in their witness testimony. He didn't say any names, but I think we can all agree that shit's not adding up between all four of these accounts. You'll see more and more as time goes on. Some of the contradictions are actually egregious, though. For example, James told the courts that Danielle had made some sort of comment to him about how Nikita was going to regret what she was doing with McGregor because she had a boyfriend at home. Danielle, on the other hand, when she gave her testimony, she said, "I literally never said that." She insists that those words, nothing to that effect ever came out of her mouth. So did James Lawrence make that up? I don't know. But anyway, Danielle's account ends when she and McGregor left the hotel and he was giving her a lift home. She said that as they left, everyone seemed fine and in good spirits and very cognitively aware, I guess. But she later on received an Instagram message from Nikita Hand saying that she'd been sexually assaulted. As for the medical evidence that was shown in trial, there was a lot of it, actually. Multiple different medical professionals testified for Nikita, explaining just how extensive all of her bruising was, including fingertip-shaped bruising on her arms, on her legs, her buttocks, which was all consistent with being gripped. Not only that, but this poor woman, remember, literally had a tampon wedged so impossibly far up into her body that doctors in the sexual assault unit at the hospital had to use forceps to remove it. But it wasn't just the physical bruises. A psychiatrist also testified about the horrific trauma that Nikita Hand had endured, and she still feels the effects of regularly with the nightmares and the panic attacks. And then comes the DNA evidence. Of course, Nikita had gone to the hospital and they had done swabs that confirmed that Conor McGregor's semen was present on her jumpsuit and on her underwear. Now, this doesn't prove much on its own. It doesn't prove non-consent anyway. But what was really weird to me, James Lawrence, who claimed that he also had sex with Nikita after McGregor, his DNA was not present on Nikita or her underwear or her jumpsuit. Nothing. There was no physical evidence of a sexual encounter with James. He insisted that this is probably because he used a condom, so maybe that explains it. Or maybe Nikita's memory serves and it actually never did happen. She does insist that their sexual encounter is, quote, a made-up story, and that James is lying to protect McGregor. And maybe the lack of DNA on her jumpsuit where there is DNA of McGregor's, maybe that proves something? I'm not sure. On trial, Nikita was on the stand for days and it was brutal. She was crying through the whole thing and it got so bad that they had to take multiple breaks just to get through her testimony. But all eyes were still on McGregor. The moment that everyone was really waiting for was for him to take the stand. He was the star of the show after all. He was the famous one and Nikita wasn't. Let's be honest, half of the courtroom were his fans. And up there, he became quite the showman. He was sprinkling in these humorous, semi-sarcastic comments about how the sex was very consensual from his memory, describing it at different points as athletic, enthusiastic, prolonged, vigorous. Outrageous choice of words, thank you. He told the courts how Nikita had sent him a slightly provocative photo of her in her red jumpsuit earlier on in the night. I mean, I thought we all agreed a long time ago that someone's choice of clothing doesn't mean that they're asking for it. That's some prehistoric victim blaming right there. But he also said that he didn't believe that Nikita had been wearing a tampon when they had sex. He said that he saw no tampon, he saw no blood. But wait, because when her swabs were taken at the hospital, blood was present on them, suggesting that she was in fact on her period. So when Conor says that there was no blood at all, he's either lying, or maybe there was actually no blood because there was in fact a tampon wedged impossibly high up there stopping it. In which case, Conor's own account would support the evidence of sexual assault, right? Forgive me if I'm understanding that wrong, but I don't think I am. He's either lying or he's dobbing himself in my opinion. It just sheds a lot of question on his testimony, don't you think? When he's being so adamant that they had consensual sex, but there was no blood. It's like, well, how? It was a fact that this woman was menstruating at the time, so I don't know, something's not adding up. When McGregor was up there on the stand, he was getting quite irate at points, especially during his cross-examination from Nikita's lawyer, who was asking him why the police didn't have his phone for the investigation, but Nikita had willingly given hers over in the beginning. In fact, a lot of the content of McGregor's lawyer's questions were based on Nikita's texts and stuff that they'd found in her phone, so it's hardly fair that his phone was never gone through and evidence from his phone wasn't included in the trial. I don't know, McGregor insisted that police never asked for his phone and he just never thought to give it over. But he's getting angrier and angrier when her lawyer is saying, well, you say you wanted this case resolved and you want the truth out there in the open, so surely handing your phone in would help do exactly that. To that, McGregor snapped at the lawyers, asking why they hadn't got the statement from the taxi driver who said she was sucking his fucking dick in the back of the car. Apparently, when McGregor said that, everyone in the courtroom gasped. McGregor had completely lost his cool in that moment, and everyone could tell. And just FYI, we don't hear any more about this whole taxi driver, her sucking him off in the car. I'm not entirely sure where McGregor got it from, because no one else mentions it. Odd. Everyone just kind of moved on after that. But if it was me, I would be pressing him to see if he was intentionally lying just to make Nikita look bad right there. I'm shocked that everyone just kind of like moved past that without question. Regardless, at this point, even McGregor's legal team themselves could tell that the jury hadn't taken well to their client. They were gasping at the things that he was saying, his inappropriate choice of wording, and the hand gestures that he was using when he talked about Nikita in her red jumpsuit. He made some sort of hand gesture. I wasn't there, so I don't know what it was, but you can only imagine. And at the end of the day, the jury's opinion and how they felt about each of these people was very important, because this case was always going to boil down to who the jury believed. Was Nikita telling the truth, or was McGregor? Had Nikita been a fully willing participant in what happened at the hotel, or was she pressured? Did she just freeze? Which is honestly a very common response to feeling coerced or pressured into a sexual situation. It's a very unfortunate survival instinct that a lot of people have to avoid making the situation any more dangerous for themselves. So they just freeze, and they don't choose to do that. I feel like this is such an important distinction to be made, because submission is not the same as consent. Submission does not equal consent. Just because someone goes along with something doesn't mean that they wanted it. And that is what the jury had to decide here. But McGregor wasn't actually the only one on trial. James Lawrence was as well now that he had confessed to the police that he had supposedly had sex with Nikita and she has exactly zero memory of that happening. Well, that means James Lawrence must have raped her too. She was clearly too drunk to consent to that, if she was too drunk to form memories of what was going on. This is a different type of conversation around consent. If you're so out of it that you have no idea what's going on, that's not consent. She told a psychiatrist that when she found out, when James had said all of this to the police, she felt like a lump of meat. But James has a different story. According to him, Nikita was fully aware of what was going on and she was totally into it. He says that they were kissing in the taxi, they were kissing in the lift, she seemed coherent, and she was supposedly giving him the green light. And then there's some CCTV footage, and we have to talk about this because McGregor and Lawrence are convinced that this CCTV footage proves their innocence. And I personally haven't seen said footage. In fact, barely anyone actually has seen this footage because the judge banned Conor McGregor from sharing any of it outside of court. But apparently the footage is from the lift in the hotel, and it supposedly shows Nikita stumbling around looking very, very visibly drunk. She's acting silly, even a little bit flirty with James, but the point is she looks really fucking drunk. Her and James had their arms around each other. She kissed him on the cheek at one point, and as these tapes were shown in court, Nikita sobbed. She just felt hollow, watching herself do things that she had zero memory of. It was beyond disturbing for her. It was like watching a stranger. The jury had to decide if this CCTV footage from the lift supported her argument that she was too drunk to consent, or does it support his that she was coherent enough to have consensual sex with him. But when it comes to Conor McGregor's verdict, it's different because Nikita remembers all of that. She was sober enough to know exactly what was happening and that she resisted and that she made it very clear that she wasn't consenting. McGregor's defense is kind of like, well, she didn't stop me, so she must have wanted it. Gross. Remember, submission doesn't equal consent. On the final day of the trial, after only 6 hours of deliberation, the jury finally returned to give their verdict. The entire courtroom was silent. The tension was unreal. McGregor and Nikita were sitting pretty close to each other in the courthouse, but he hadn't come alone. The energy in that courtroom was completely one-sided. The back of the courtroom was packed with his supporters, his fans, and McGregor had a full squad standing right behind him, intimidating as hell. His fiancée Dee Devlin was also sitting right beside him as the verdict was read out loud to everyone. Conor McGregor was found liable for sexual assault. Accountability would be taken publicly, and Nikita Hand would be awarded just short of €250,000. James Lawrence, on the other hand, was completely cleared. He wouldn't pay a single penny to Nikita. And just to remind everyone, this was a civil trial, so no one's going to jail, but the jury did decide that McGregor more than likely raped Nikita Hand, while James Lawrence probably didn't. McGregor walked out of that courthouse first, and then Nikita, who was surrounded by her legal team, her boyfriend, and she stood out there and made this very tearful statement to the press. She was so grateful for the verdict that finally it seemed someone was listening and believing her after all these years. Later that night, McGregor and his partner Dee Devlin both took to social media. I'll start with her post because she was fucking vile, actually, posting horrific things about her fiancé's victim. She was calling Nikita Hand vile, saying things like, "What sort of woman are you? My sons will be warned that women like you exist in the world." McGregor himself, on the other hand, was slightly more professional with it. He let the masses know that he would be appealing the verdict. And for Nikita, that would mean that this nightmare wasn't over quite yet. McGregor submitted his appeal on the basis of supposedly damning new evidence. Evidence that was so damning that he didn't include it in the trial in the first place. That makes sense. But he claimed that he had 2 witnesses in the form of Nikita's neighbours who would testify that she and her partner had a rather argumentative relationship, and especially on the night that she got back from Conor McGregor's hotel, they supposedly had an explosive, possibly violent altercation. Essentially, McGregor was trying to explain away the bruises on Nikita's body once again. This time, he can't blame James Lawrence because he's been cleared. So I guess he's looking to blame Nikita's own boyfriend at the time. Nikita herself denied these allegations completely, and she even swore in an affidavit that her boyfriend had never assaulted her, not that night, nor at any other point during their relationship. Once these potential witness statements were mentioned to the judge, he questioned whether this kind of evidence would even be admissible in court, and I think McGregor's legal team, metaphorically shit themselves a bit. They immediately bailed on these witness statements. Even his lawyers admitted that evidence just wouldn't hold up in court, so it was abandoned. But McGregor was still gonna go ahead with the appeal anyway. I'm sure his legal team were warning him behind the scenes that this was a very flimsy argument, but now he would be appealing on the basis that the jury just hadn't understood the case and all of the evidence well enough the first time. Okay. One thing that he really clung to was when the judge in the first trial asked the jury whether McGregor had assaulted Nikita, but didn't say sexually assaulted. So he's actually trying to argue, seriously, this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. He's actually trying to argue that the jury was just confused and they might have thought that this whole entire trial was about a fight, like an assault, and not a sexual assault because of the judge's wording. Come on, like, are you serious? Not only are McGregor and his team implying that the jury are stupid, but they must believe we all bloody are. No one got the wrong end of the stick here. This case could not have been more clearly about sexual assault. The appeal went about exactly how you'd imagine. He lost it. Flop. The courts were also really pissed off with McGregor at this point because they felt like he was genuinely just making a mockery of the jury and the judicial system, trying to appeal on the basis of, well, the jury were just probably stupid and that's why they got it wrong. The court said that this supposed damning evidence that suddenly disappeared under, quote, suspicious circumstances, only further proved that Nikita Hand wasn't lying about all of this. They said that the jury believed her back then, and now the courts believed her even more. The judge said that Nikita had prevailed in one of the most hard-fought trials of recent years, and she was awarded all the compensation money to the highest level possible. But before wrapping up, the judges dropped a bomb. They would be sending that whole supposed neighbour evidence to the Director of Public Prosecutions. So what does that actually mean? Because I bet there's going to be a lot of you like, okay, bitch. Well, this is what I was saying a bit earlier on in the episode, that the judges think that someone might have lied under oath at some point during all of this. Basically, if those neighbours or anyone involved with those witness statements, including McGregor or his lawyers, if any of them made false statements and tried to make up false evidence, they could end up in serious legal trouble themselves. Now, prosecutors would be looking into possible perjury charges if anything shady arises. If anyone's found guilty, they could face fines, a criminal record, or even prison time. In Ireland, perjury can mean up to 7 years in prison. And that is actually where things stand today as I'm recording this episode. Right now, McGregor is still liable for the sexual assault of Nikita Hand, and nothing has been overturned, but there is the possibility of future updates as far as perjury goes. It's honestly been infuriating uncovering Conor McGregor's aggressive and violent patterns towards vulnerable people in general, people who would never be considered a fair fight. From what's observable in just his public outbursts alone is that he really struggles to control his anger. He can't seem to stop it before it turns into violence. For example, there's the time he launched a metal dolly through the window of a bus, or when he was arrested in 2019 for punching an elderly man in a pub in Dublin after this man refused a shot of Conor's whiskey. But the group that seemingly suffers the most at the hands of Conor McGregor are women. He's been accused of assault, sexual and otherwise, in Dublin, Corsica, Rome, Ibiza, Miami, different places, but always the same story. One particularly harrowing case comes from July 2022 when he was hosting a few friends on a yacht out in Ibiza, and when the sun began to rise the next morning, Conor got violent out of nowhere. He punched a young woman that he didn't really know that well in the stomach, in the chin. He punched her multiple times. He was even threatening to drown her, and she was so scared that she literally jumped off the boat in the middle of the ocean to escape him. How scary. Imagine being miles out in the vast blue, no one else is around to save you or hear you scream, and you determine that jumping into the unknown would probably be safer than staying on the boat with this violent man. Thankfully, this woman was saved by a Red Cross boat later on. Obviously, she had nothing with her whatsoever when she was rescued, just the bikini that she was wearing. Her phone, her bag, her ID, everything was still on McGregor's boat. And as horrific as all of this sounds, it's sadly just the tip of the iceberg. On the night of the 2023 NBA Finals in Miami, McGregor punched the Miami Heat mascot so hard that he bloody hospitalised the poor guy. And McGregor wasn't even done there. Later that exact same night at an after party, a woman alleges that McGregor sexually assaulted her in the bathrooms. She even accuses his bodyguards of pushing her in there, literally helping him trap and assault women. I believe that McGregor actually paid that woman from that allegation in an undisclosed settlement outside of court. Bear in mind, most of the stories that I just told you came after Nikita Hand's case. Conor McGregor is not stopping this shit. He hasn't learnt or changed. Not to mention the ceaseless racism that spews from this man's mouth. God forbid he has an opponent who isn't a white guy, because whether it's Floyd Mayweather or Khabib, McGregor will bring race into the trash talk or even in comments made behind the scenes. It's not even a controversial, offensive act that he's putting on. It's who he is. It's actually really, really scary to consider how adored this man is. His legion of fanboys think that he can do no wrong. I assume many of them are already sounding off in the comments of this episode. Hello, boys. Yoo-hoo. But seriously, how are these kind of men allowed to stay all-powerful? It seems that McGregor gets a pass for stuff that would actually ruin any other celebrity, but when he does horrible shit, it's just McGregor being McGregor. He's just being the notorious MMA. He's become this weird symbol of far-right alpha male white culture. And if you need proof of just how much power this man holds, he was personally invited to Trump's inauguration. But are we really surprised at that at all? That he's rubbing shoulders with another powerful man who's been accused of harming women, who Americans are now forced to call Mr. President? For men like Conor McGregor and Trump, hey, power protects power. He's not shielded by innocence, but by the cowardly fear of other men. Men who stay silent, men who look the other way, men who hate women. That's why when women like Nikita Hand speak up, we support them. We amplify their voice, their fight, and we're there for them. There's strength in numbers, and these brave women's voices are the only things strong enough to break through the silence. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Outlaw Podcast. It's been a very heavy one, actually. But thank you also to NordVPN for collabing with us to make this episode possible. Remember, you can get an exclusive NordVPN deal and 4 months extra when you click the link down below in the description. It's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. If you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a like, leave us a comment so that we can continue the conversation down below. I'm extra specially excited for the comments under this video. I mean, excited is maybe the wrong word, but no, actually, I am excited to see all the girls coming together and getting, like, collectively passionate about this case. Me and my team have been the whole time we've been researching it, so I'm excited to welcome you guys in on the conversation. But also, if you're listening on a podcast platform, please rate us 5 stars, and I'll see you in the next episode of Outlaw Podcast. Bye!